The wind screamed like something alive. Snow beat against the windows thick as fog. Martha's porch light barely held back the white. She lived alone. No visitors in weeks. Then 6 men in uniform soaked shivering. They said their truck broke down in the storm. She didn't ask questions, just opened the door, gave them heat soup blankets, everything she had left. They looked like soldiers. They sounded like soldiers. But by morning, they would take more than food. Not all who wear the uniform serve honor, and not all kindness is returned. Would you give everything to men you didn't know in a storm that could kill you? If this were your home, would you open the door? Drop a comment below. I would, or I wouldn't. Martha Whitmore was 68. She lived at the edge of nowhere, one road, one roof, endless trees. The kind of place you only find if you're lost, or meant to. Her house was once a rest stop, Whitmore Point, built by her husband after the war. He'd called it a place for anyone who needed to breathe. Truckers, veterans, strangers all had passed through once, but those days were long gone. Now it was mostly dust, canned food, and the hum of silence. She kept it open anyway, not for business but for something deeper. Every morning she lit the stove, put on a fresh pot of coffee, and waited, just in case someone came. Some called it habit. She called it a promise. To him, to herself, to anyone still out there trying to get home. Her husband Thomas had built the rest stop after he returned from Iraq. Not much of a talker, but he'd hammer for hours without saying a word. He called it his way of healing. 4 walls, a roof, a working coffee pot. He said, "If just one person makes it through a storm because this place is here, then it matters." Martha believed him. They ran it together for years. Truckers came in at midnight. Veterans stayed for coffee they couldn't afford. Thomas never asked questions, never locked the door, not once. When cancer took him, he asked her for one thing: keep it open, even if no one comes. So she did. Every winter, every storm, every day after he was gone. The world had moved on. Gas stations turned into chains. Highways shifted. Fewer trucks passed through, but Martha kept the lights on. She swept the floors, wiped the counters, restocked the coffee shelf even if no one touched it. Each morning she cracked open the door, let in the cold, listened to the wind, then turned on the old kettle just like always. She did it for him, but maybe deep down she also did it for herself, to feel useful, to remember who she was. Sometimes a lost traveler would stop by, a thank you, a smile, then gone again, but mostly it was just her ticking clock and that quiet kind of hope that someone somewhere still needed this place. That morning, the wind changed. It hissed low through the trees. The sky turned a heavy kind of gray. Martha checked the radio. Blizzard warning region-wide, expected to last through the night. Road closures likely, power loss possible. She didn't panic. She filled the kettle, laid out candles, loaded firewood into a crate by the door. This wasn't her first storm, but it had a weight she couldn't explain, as if something was coming. That wasn't just snow. She boiled eggs, made soup, refilled the lantern oil, then she stood by the window, hands wrapped around her mug, watching the road disappear beneath the first soft sweep of white, and she whispered, "Let them find their way if they're out there." By dusk the snow was thick. Wind pressed hard against the glass. The world outside had vanished in white. Then 3 loud knocks. Martha froze. No one ever came this late, not in this weather. She opened the door an inch. Cold air bit at her face. 6 men stood there wrapped in heavy coats, uniforms dusted with snow, faces red from windburn. "We're soldiers," one said. "Truck's dead, radio's out. We've been walking for hours." Martha didn't hesitate. She stepped aside. "Come in, get warm." She led them toward the stove. Set out towels, pointed to the bench near the fire. Their boots left melting tracks, their hands shook. But their eyes? She couldn't read them. Not yet. Martha moved quickly. She handed out blankets, gestured toward the table, put water on the stove. "You'll need something hot," she said. They didn't speak much, just nodded, sat down, removed wet gloves with stiff fingers. Steam rose from their coats. One of them coughed into his sleeve. Another rubbed his hands watching the fire too closely. Martha stirred soup, split bread into bowls. Her hands moved like memory-efficient, practiced. "I don't have much," she said, "but it'll help." One man tried to offer money. She waved it off. "You're cold. You're tired. That's enough reason." They thanked her in low voices. A few smiled, but something hung in the air. Not fear, not yet, just the kind of silence that makes you notice how quiet everything else has become. The soup was quiet comfort. Spoons tapped softly. Steam rose between them. Finally, one of the men spoke. Said his name was Tyler. Light southern drawl, easy smile. Another Ray cracked a joke about army food. The others laughed just enough. It felt normal, almost. Martha smiled back, but her eyes moved. She took in their boots. Different brands, no name tags, no unit patches. "Where's your convoy?" she asked. "Back road iced over," Tyler said. "We walked 4 miles before we saw your light." Martha nodded, poured more water, offered crackers. But inside a quiet thread pulled tight. Something small, something off. She didn't name it yet, just folded it away for now. Ray flinched as he took off his coat. A thin cut ran across his forearm. Red, not deep, but fresh. Martha noticed immediately. She reached for the first aid box. "Let me clean that," she said. Ray hesitated, then shrugged, held out his arm. She dabbed the wound with alcohol. He hissed, then laughed it off. "Old barn door caught me," he said. Martha didn't respond. She wrapped the gauze carefully, hands steady from years of practice. "Not your first field injury, huh?" he joked. She didn't smile. "Not my first," anything she said. Their eyes met for a second, then broke apart. As she packed up the kit, she noticed his jacket again. Wrong shade of green. Too new, too clean. She folded that thought next to the others. Quiet, but growing. Tyler leaned back in his chair. The soup was gone. His voice loosened with warmth. "Convoy left Fort Lawrence 2 days ago," he said. "Headed north. Bad timing." He paused, glanced at the others. "They told us to wait it out, but we tried to move anyway." Martha nodded. Didn't interrupt. Let him speak. Road iced fast. Truck slid into a ditch. We lost comms. He shrugged. "Figured we'd freeze if we stayed." The men listened but didn't add much. Ray picked at a crack in the table. One stirred his coffee too long. Martha watched all of it, listened to the rhythm, measured the pauses. Something in her gut whispered again. Too neat, too rehearsed, too many missing details. But still, she said nothing. Martha poured herself a small cup of coffee, sat across from the men, her back straight, eyes soft but steady. "My husband built this place," she said, "after the war. Said the world needed more doors that stay open." No one spoke, so she kept going. He never talked much about Iraq, but he hammered these walls like every nail was something he wanted to forget. She glanced at the old photo near the fire. Faded uniform, bronze frame. He died 7 years ago. Lung cancer. Agent Orange didn't ask who served longer. The room was still. One man cleared his throat quietly. Martha didn't cry. Didn't need to. She just looked at them and said, "So now I keep it open, even if no one's coming." For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the fire, crackling low behind them. Then the youngest of the group looked up. His voice was quiet, not rehearsed. "That photo, was he in the 82nd? Martha nodded. "2nd Battalion, Mosul." The young man gave a slow exhale. "My uncle was there. Said those were the hardest days he ever lived through." Martha didn't smile, but her face softened. "He made it home?" she asked. The young man paused, mostly. The room fell quiet again. Not awkward, not tense, just full, It felt for one breath like the kind of silence that holds a little respect, but outside, the wind kept rising. Later that night they spread out their sleeping bags. Martha handed out extra quilts from the back room. The warmth settled in, a kind of uneasy calm. She stepped into the kitchen, rinsing a few cups. Behind her, voices rose in the main room, soft, casual. But one word caught her ear. "Ray, pass the light," someone said. Not sergeant, not private, just Ray. She paused, hands still in the sink. No rank, no call sign, no habit of military tone. She listened harder, but the conversation shifted. Laughter. Coughs. A mention of car trouble back in Fargo. Fargo. Her eyes narrowed. That wasn't anywhere near Fort Lawrence. She dried her hands slowly, folded the towel with care, then glanced at the clock. It was only 8:13. But suddenly the night felt longer. The men had settled in. Low murmurs, a few snores. The fire dimmed to orange coals. Martha moved quietly down the hall. She opened the supply room, stepped inside, sat down on the edge of a crate, thinking. Then she stood cross to the coat rack. A few bags were stacked beneath it, unzipped loose, too loose. She knelt, slow and silent, checked the first pack. No dog tags, no radio, just a hunting knife and a roll of bills damp with sweat. The second bag held canned beans, a flashlight, and civilian gloves. Martha didn't panic. She zipped them closed exactly how she found them, stood still, let her breath settle, then whispered to herself, "Something's off." Back in the kitchen, Martha dried her hands again, then walked toward the hallway door where the old radio sat. It was a relic, long-range dusty, nearly forgotten. Thomas had rewired it after retirement. Said, "You never know." She turned it on. The static hissed low, broken. She adjusted the dial, tapped the mic. "This is Whitmore Point. 1 civilian on site, 6 unidentified males, posing as military. Possible threat. Storm active. No exit." Silence answered. Then static. She waited. 1 minute, 2. Nothing. Martha leaned back, fingers resting on the mic. She didn't expect much, but she'd done it anyway. She clicked the radio off, turned out the hall light, and stood still for a moment, listening to the wind press hard against the walls. Martha stepped back into the room. The warmth hit her face. The smell of wood smoke and damp socks. 3 of the men were asleep. The others sat close to the fire, whispering. She didn't interrupt. She picked up a kettle, refilled it, moved slowly, carefully, like nothing had changed. But everything had. In her body tension, in her mind measure and watch. She poured hot water into chipped mugs, set them on the table without a word. No one thanked her, not this time. Ray was watching her. She felt it. Didn't look back. She took a seat in the corner, wrapped a blanket over her legs, held the mug with steady hands, and waited. Not for sleep, but for what might come next. By morning, the snow hadn't stopped. It had thickened, heavy drifts now buried the porch steps. Martha stood in the pantry, took silent inventory. 3 cans of beans, 1 bag of rice, half a loaf of bread already going stiff. She packed what she could into a tray, split portions onto paper plates. No extras, no seconds. Back in the main room, she set the tray down, said nothing, watched how fast the food disappeared. Tyler looked up, forced a smile. "Storm like this, we're lucky you stayed open." Martha gave a nod, didn't answer. One man glanced toward the back door. The lock clicked louder than it should have. Martha caught the sound, then looked away. She was counting more than calories now. She was counting hours. Late afternoon, the light began to fade. Outside, the sky turned white-gray, blending snow with silence. Martha carried wood from the side porch. Each step slow through the drifting snow. As she rounded the back corner, she paused. One of the men, she didn't know his name, was near the supply door, just standing, too still, too focused. He jiggled the handle once, checked his shoulder, didn't see her, Martha didn't move, didn't speak. She just watched. Then he turned, saw her, gave a tight smile. Was just looking for a bathroom, he said, too quickly. Martha nodded, but said nothing. She carried the wood inside, heart beating slow and heavy. That evening they ate in near silence. Only the wind made noise now, pressing hard against the walls. After dinner, Tyler stayed behind. The others drifted to their blankets. He stood near the sink, arms crossed. Watched Martha pour water into the kettle. "You've got more supplies, right?" His voice was calm. Too calm. Martha didn't answer right away. Just dried her hands. Waited. He went on. "Just thinking. If this storm lasts another night, maybe we borrow a little more." Someone scoffed under their breath. Josh again. "Borrow. We're really calling it that." Tyler's smile faded. "Don't start." Ray cut in firm. "We've come too far. Stick to the plan." Josh stood up, tension in his jaw. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Not with her. The room tensed. No one answered, but the crack had formed. He smiled like it was nothing, like she should agree. Martha looked up quiet and steady. "I give what's needed," she said, "not what's wanted." Tyler chuckled soft. No harm in asking. But they both knew that wasn't a question. Not really. Martha set the kettle down, turned toward him fully, her voice low, even. "You're guests, not owners, and that door stays locked." Tyler raised an eyebrow, still smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We're all just trying to make it through," he said. "One team, right?" Martha didn't blink. "My husband gave his life for this place. He built it for people who needed refuge. Not excuses." The smile faded. He nodded once, then stepped back. "No worries," he said. "But if things get worse, we'll all need to be flexible." Martha held his gaze. "I don't bend for threats." She turned away, poured tea into a chipped mug, and let silence speak for her. That night, the house didn't sleep. Martha sat near the fire pretending to read. Eyes on the page, ears on the room. The men whispered now. Not loud, but layered. Quick words clipped breath. One laughed once, short, dry. It didn't sound like warmth. They weren't trying to include her anymore. They weren't trying to pretend. Someone glanced toward the back hallway. Another shifted his pack closer. Martha noticed. She kept her breathing slow, her posture relaxed. But inside, every part of her was listening. Something had changed. Not said, not confirmed, but known. Like a wire pulled tight beneath the floorboards. And soon it would snap. The fire burned low, only coals now deep red fading. Martha sat alone in the kitchen, the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock. That was all. She didn't feel afraid. She felt awake. She thought of Thomas, of nights like this when he'd say nothing but check every lock twice. He always told her if it comes to that, you act first, not second. She reached under the sink, pulled out the old crowbar he'd left behind. Heavy, cold. She leaned it against the wall, just in case. Then she lit another lamp, let the warm light reach every shadow, and sat back down. Hands on the table, face steady, waiting, but not passive. By morning, the cold had crept in again. The heat barely held. Frost kissed the window edges. Martha made coffee, poured slow, quiet, felt the shift behind her. Ray stood near the back door, arms folded. Tyler beside him. "You keep that room locked?" Ray asked. His voice wasn't soft anymore, just flat. Martha didn't turn around. "I do. What's in there?" "Things that stay inside." Tyler stepped closer. "You think we're going to steal from you?" Martha turned now, faced them. "No," she said. "I think you already have." They didn't answer, but they didn't deny it either. No one moved, no one blinked. The silence wasn't safety. It was pressure, and it was rising. Martha didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She just stood still, shoulders square, hands calm. "That room," she said, "holds what's left of him. Gear he used, food he stocked, things he touched before he died." She paused. The words weighed heavy in the air. I don't keep it locked to keep you out. I keep it locked because some things shouldn't be handled by strangers." Ray shifted his stance. Tyler looked away. Martha stepped toward them. "Only once. You've eaten here. You've warmed your hands by my fire. But this place was built with more than nails." Silence followed. But it wasn't peace. It was restraint. Barely. The crash came fast. Metal on wood. A shoulder hitting the locked door. Martha turned the corner and saw him not Ray, not Tyler. One of the quiet ones. Hands on the handle, trying again. She didn't shout. She didn't run. She walked straight to him, stood firm just 3 feet away. "Step back," she said. He hesitated, then smiled, small and bitter. "We're cold," he said. "We're hungry." Martha's voice stayed steady. "You think that door holds comfort, but what's in there was bought with a life. My husband gave everything so I could keep something." Her eyes locked on his. "If you take that, you're not just stealing supplies, you're taking the last piece of who I am." Josh stepped forward, hands raised. "Just stop! This isn't right." But it was too late. Someone pushed past him, and Martha fell. There was a pause. One of them, Josh the youngest, shifted uncomfortably. He looked at Martha, then back at the others. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Maybe we don't need to do this. She let us in." Ray snapped, "Not the time." Tyler glared at him. "Get back in line." Josh hesitated, eyes on Martha. She saw it, the doubt, the fracture, and maybe for a moment, hope. She stepped in front of the door, body small but unshaken. "Don't," she said. The man didn't answer. He moved fast. Too fast. One hard shove, she stumbled back, hit the edge of the table, then the floor. The room spun. Sound drained. Voices rose sharp, blurred. Boots scraping. A door creaked open. Then nothing. Cold wood against her cheek. A metallic taste in her mouth. She didn't speak, didn't cry. Just drifted as the last lantern flickered low. Outside, the storm swallowed the house whole. Inside, Martha lay still. Not gone, but far. She woke to cold. Still on the floor, back aching, head throbbing. The lantern had gone out. The room smelled of smoke and dust. No voices, no footsteps. She pulled herself up, one hand on the wall, the other pressed to her ribs. The door to the pantry stood open. Her chest tightened. She stepped closer, slow, uneven. Inside, shelves stripped. Nothing left. Not even the tin marked emergency. She stood there for a while, not shaking, not crying, just empty. Then she whispered, "They took it all." The wind howled outside, but inside something even colder settled. She wrapped a coat around her shoulders. Didn't bother with boots. Her steps dragged across the floor. The radio sat where she'd left it, covered in frost. Still humming low. She turned the dial. Crackling static answered. She pressed the mic, her voice thin. "This is Whitmore Point. Requesting help. If anyone hears me." She waited. Nothing. She tried again. Each word slower. Each breath shorter. She set the mic down, held the edge of the table to stay upright. No reply came. Only wind. But she had tried. Even if no one heard, the message was out there. And that meant she wasn't completely alone. Not yet. The house was colder now. Still, heavy with silence. Martha moved slowly to the back room. Found the last oil lamp tucked behind the blankets. Her hands shook as she lit the wick. It flickered weak, uncertain, but it held. She placed it near the table, sat down beside it. The flame painted shadows across her face. She pulled a drawer open, took out a notepad, an old pen. The storm screamed outside, but she barely heard it. This light was all that remained. Not to warm the room, but to hold time still just long enough to say what needed saying. She opened the notebook. The pages curled from cold. Her fingers ached as she wrote. To whoever finds this, she began. Her handwriting was slow letters, uneven. She wrote of the storm, the strangers, the silence that followed. She didn't name names, she didn't accuse, just told the truth as gently as she could. Then, at the bottom, "Don't ever lose faith, but don't give it blindly." She set the pen down, folded the page once, held it to her chest. The lamp hissed, burning lower now, but her eyes didn't close in fear, only tiredness and something like peace. She leaned back against the wall, blanket pulled around her shoulders. Letter held close. The flame shrank, casting one last ring of light. Her breath slowed. Each inhale thinner, each exhale longer. She looked toward the window but couldn't see the sky. Only snow pressing against the glass. Her lips moved. No sound, just the shape of a name no one else would hear. Then silence. Complete. Outside the wind howled. Inside nothing moved. Not grief, not fear, only stillness. As if the house was holding its breath with her. The storm eased by morning. Winds softer. Sky turning a pale washed-out blue. Tires crunched over snow. A Humvee rolled up slow and cautious. Doors opened. Boots hit ice. "Signal came from here," a voice said. They entered the house. Lantern burned out. Air sharp with cold. They found her in the back room. Blanket wrapped tight. Eyes closed. Letter in her hands. No chaos, no fear. Only stillness exactly where she chose to be. A soldier knelt beside her. Gently took the paper. He didn't read aloud. He just bowed his head. "She stayed," he whispered. Another added, "until the end." The officer stood by the window letter unfolded in his hands. He cleared his throat, voice low. "Even, to whoever finds this." The others listened, helmets off, backs straight. She gave what she had. Not because it was safe, but because someone might need it. The room was silent except for his voice and the hum of the generator warming slowly. She believed in people. Even when they failed her. He paused, swallowed hard. "Don't lose faith, but don't give it blindly." He folded the letter, placed it on the table like something sacred. No one spoke. Because some truths don't need response, only respect. They didn't speak of plans, they just moved. One soldier relit the stove, another cleared the broken glass. A third taped the cracked window with care, not haste. They repaired the pantry door, swept the floors, folded unused blankets. Outside, a pair of engineers shoveled the steps Martha once swept by hand. No orders were shouted, no timeline rushed. Everything was done as if she were still watching and deserved every bit of it. By afternoon, warmth returned to the walls. The generator hummed steady. The place held quiet again. Not empty, not forgotten, just whole. And somewhere in that quiet, her choice still echoed. By dusk, the snow had stilled. The wind no longer howled, just a quiet cold resting on the roof. They gathered at the front steps. One carried a metal plaque, another a drill hand steady. No speeches, no salute, just work. The plaque was bolted beneath the old flagpole where Thomas once raised the stars each morning. It read, "Whitmore Point," a place that held the line even when no one else did. A few stepped back, stared at the words, said nothing. But one soldier took off his cap, held it to his chest. Not because he had to, but because something in him understood. Late that evening, a long-haul truck pulled off the highway. Its engine slowed, then stopped. The driver stepped down. Young, tired, wearing gloves too thin for the cold. He walked toward the door but paused. Saw the plaque, read the name. He didn't knock, didn't go inside. Instead, he reached into the cab, pulled out a single white flower wrapped in tissue. He placed it gently beneath the sign, held it there for a second, then stood back, head bowed. No one told him who Martha was. He didn't need to know. The house had spoken for her, and he listened in the quiet like she once did for everyone else. The truck pulled away, taillights fading into white. Inside the house held steady. Warmth returned in layers, not loud, but lasting. The stove ticked quietly. Boot prints faded on the rug. A clean cup rested on the counter. Someone had folded a quilt and placed it neatly by the fire. No one claimed it, but it stayed. The plaque outside caught morning light, gold on bronze, snow gathering soft around its base. No more voices echoed in the rooms, but nothing felt empty. Because what she built was never just wood and walls. It was a place where someone stayed when no one else would, and that kind of staying never really leaves. In the front room above the counter, a photo hung. Martha, wrapped in her winter coat, hands resting on the edge of a coffee mug. A soft, tired smile barely there but unmistakable. Someone had wiped the frame clean. Someone had lit a candle below it. No flowers, no ribbons, just her face, and the room she had once warmed with presence more than fire. A note sat beside the photo. 3 words in thick pen. She stayed open. It didn't explain everything, didn't try to. It simply told the truth the way Martha had lived it, plain steady and without apology. She never asked for thanks, never needed a witness. But the story stayed anyway in the warmth of the stove, the folded blankets, the light above the door that never went out. Everyone who passed through left with something, even those who didn't deserve it. And Martha paid for that. Not with anger, not even regret, but with everything she had left. Because believing in people isn't safe. It never was. It's slow. It's quiet. And sometimes it costs you more than anyone will ever know. But still, she did it. And that is why her story was worth telling. Martha's story isn't about victory. It's about choice. Choosing kindness even when it costs everything. Choosing to keep the door open when the storm screams to close it. That's the kind of bravery that doesn't need applause. It quietly changes the world one small act at a time. If this story touched you, remember to share it with those who keep their own light burning. And if you've ever trusted with your whole heart, leave a comment, "I still believe." Because sometimes that belief is the greatest strength we have.